Hey, everybody!
Welcome to the show.
Critical Hit Podcast, Episode 4.
Episode 4. It's been a hot second, John.
I was trying to get it going.
Did you see it? It was like...
Yeah, it kind of like faded in.
It was pretty epic.
Ombre sound.
Ombre?
Ombre sound? Starbucks cup sound. Anyway,
I don't know what you're talking to.
It gets like, it fades. And,
okay.
Yeah, that's ombre.
The crescendo?
Ombre. Yeah.
Anyways, we've been gone for a while.
We have been gone for a while, but lots of life things have happened.
Lots of life things have happened.
I mean, if you guys are following us on the tumbles and you kind of saw what was going on there, but Adam
a little hint.
Did some cool stuff. I did a cool thing.
What did you do, John?
I went and I got myself hitched.
Oh, wow.
Adam was there. It was a grand old time. About a month ago, I got married.
Give the best man speech anyone's ever heard.
He gave a speech. You guys can find that on the YouTubes. Just kidding. You can't find it on the YouTubes. I didn't put it up.
I don't want to watch my speech again.
I don't want to watch it again either. It was very heartfelt, but...
but after further analysis, you might be like, Adam, what were you actually saying?
You only need one. But it was good. No, it was very nice. And it was a beautiful wedding, and we had a grand old time, and I'm living the married life now.
And the end result is now, instead of living 27 seconds away from me, he lives 20 minutes away from me.
23 minutes. Yeah.
Which is inconvenient for me.
Sure, it's inconvenient for the creative endeavors that we seek, but
kind of segueing off of that, give us some grace period. We're definitely trying to figure out this, but yeah, like we said, our creative endeavors are more complicated now since we're further apart, so we have to be more intentional and blah, 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 blah.
But we haven't given up, and we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, we are. Did we announce? We didn't officially announce what Critical Hit we're doing next. We implied it, but yeah, we're still working towards that.
Yeah, we're going to get it done, and we hope to have it done by Christmas. And I'm saying that now so that we will commit to getting it done.
That's fair.
By roughly Christmas.
Deadlines are good.
Yeah.
Okay.
What were you doing?
What was I doing? Well, CTN Expo of 2015 was 2 weekends ago. It was the weekend before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And we were really like cramming and crunching on our short film to really get as much as we could done by then, so we could get a lot of feedback at it. So that took up a lot of my time. There were a lot of sleepless nights, and I had stupid freelance stuff to do as well, kind of at the same time.
Sorry, I'm eating granola, guys.
Okay, granola guy over here. It's delicious. But CTN in of itself was a really, really incredible experience.
Better than last year?
I'd say yes, qualitatively. But in just the relationships that I made and sort of the content that, like, I was coming this year as a professional in the animation industry rather than a student. Right. So the conversations were a little different, which was cool.
And I heard that our audience got a lot bigger.
True. Doubled in size. Proof. Last year, I met 3 Critical Hit fans, and this year I met 6. And no repeats. I actually met Scott's younger brother, which was pretty awesome.
That is pretty neat. I mean, and this is in a group of, like, how many people did you say showed up?
2,000.
Yeah. So that's a significant group.
Yeah. But, the CTN Expo itself, like how it was organized, was a little worse than last year. In my opinion, I just think it's outgrown its venue. But I don't need to complain.
But that's good, because that means the community is getting bigger and cooler stuff
is
going to be able
it
to be at
means
the newer ones.
There's less jobs available for me.
That's true. That's true. I hadn't considered that. Sorry.
It's okay. It's interesting walking around because CTNX is like Tumblr in real life. Like, you're walking around all these booths and you're like, oh, I've seen that artist on Tumblr. Oh my gosh, I've seen that artist on Tumblr. It's just like all this incredible art around you, and you're like, wow, I'm not that good.
But speaking of people who are kind of good, I heard that you in particular met one of the people who has commented on some stuff that we've made before.
Yeah,
had a good time.
We hung out Sunday night, and it was really awesome talking to him. We had a lot of great conversations. So, shout out to Michael.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I always like. Here's this thing. I was watching Tabletop with Will Wheaton. I've been doing that a lot lately.
I know.
Really into board games, you know. But he was friends with some people via the interwebs, and he got them onto the show because it's like his show. He and I can see her face, but I can't think of it right now. God, you guys are gonna kill me. Anyway,
No one's gonna kill you. No one cares.
They made the. No, she's like a really big deal.
Oh,
she's like a big deal.
Yeah.
But anyway, he got people on the show that he had never really talked to in real life, and he said it was a pretty cool experience to just like see people IRL that he'd been communicating with through the interweb.
Yeah, it's very strange actually, because a conversation we had actually was just like, we're in Missouri. There's not a lot going on in Missouri. There's not a lot of industry in Missouri. So us putting out these random videos on the internet is kind of isolated for us. We're just like, oh, we just make stupid videos and put them on the internet. And, you know, views are just a number. Like, we realize those are people, but we don't really kind of think, like, how many people is actually 2,000 people?
Right.
Like, that's a lot of people.
It's a significant amount of people.
So it is interesting, like, yeah, being able to talk and kind of relate on that level.
Yeah, and I mean, we were just talking about this before the podcast started about kind of how, like, relationships are super important in general in life, but what they do for story is kind of a whole thing.
Story can't exist without relationship.
Right,
yeah.
We if you guys go back and watch Stories Are Important, I don't know if Adam could have really put enough emphasis onto just how important they are. Like, the whole video exists to just say that stories are important, but story really is the thing that we have as all human beings. Like
it's how we communicate. We share. You know, when I first meet you, I'm like, oh man, this crazy thing happened to me. That's a story.
Well, you like maybe not the first time you meet me, you might not tell me a crazy thing.
No,
you might just introduce yourself.
Not the first time we meet in general, but when I come over to your house and I'm like, dude, while I was over here, I stepped on gum. That's a story.
It's already a story. There's already conflict.
Right.
There's already
so it's just interesting. Like,
maybe
that's
we're working that out ourselves.
Sort of our universal way of communicating.
It's
crazy,
and that kind of ties back into the relational thing. It's just like, story is so important to relationships, and relationships are so important to story. It's like this weird circular thing.
True.
Like the circle of life. But in case you guys are wondering, Adam and I, well, you wouldn't be wondering about this. This would be a really weird thing for you to wonder about.
They're wondering, man.
But Adam and I are really big proponents of just like how important relationship is, which works out well because we're friends.
It's true. We have a relationship.
We have a full-on relationship. But it's just like people who don't do relationships well just kind of end up alone. You were talking about that earlier, and the importance of like having relationships is having things to kind of bounce ideas off of, people to judge kind of some of the decisions that you make, or kind of like standard normative behavioral patterns that you need to exist. And so I don't know, we kind of rambled there, but
yeah, we kind of did. So relationships are important. They have to be. It's part 2.
Relationships are important.
That'd be interesting.
Expect that by March.
Expected by 2017.
Making commitments for Adam's time.
Boo.
Anyway,
what were the actual topics to talk about? I've seen both Peanuts and Good Dinosaur. You have not.
I have not. I've been busy.
I don't know if either are really critical hit worthy. I mean, not like worthy as in... I thought they were both good. I liked them, but just usually critical hits spawn out of an interesting kind of structural kind of... I don't know, like something happens like, well, that's interesting structurally or whatever, but
you did have one point that you were going to... I remember you saying something about a lighting thing that happened in Good Dinosaur that was similar to something that happened in Tangled.
Well, I was just referring back to that question we got, I don't know, a podcast or two ago, where that person talked about design and lighting versus, I guess, continuity of environment. So in Tangled, she made the example of the scene where Mother Gothel first comes back and Rapunzel's gone. It's super dark and cloudy all of a sudden.
All of a sudden, literally.
Which I've never noticed, and I don't know if it's because we had that conversation, I was more conscious of it, but in The Good Dinosaur, that happened a lot. Storms are a big thing in this. There's many storms, and I don't know if that's just kind of primitive times are more stormy. I don't know. There was also sort of a metaphorical aspect to it, too. But regardless, there was one specific time, I guess I'll leave it spoiler-free, especially because you haven't seen it, but... where a large conflict happened, and I noticed it, and it did take me on the story for just a sec, where it was just like, oh, where did the storm come from? It was just like a bright and sunny morning.
But can we just talk about how storms in life sometimes come out of nowhere? They just take the wind right out of your sails, you know. Well, I guess not really. That would be a terrible...
No, it puts wind right into your sails.
Definitely puts more wind into your sails.
Yeah.
Just knocks you off your feet, you know. Those things sometimes come out of nowhere. So maybe that's what they were trying to say.
So I was discussing this with Jeb a little, and just... I know, like, visual dev artists, like, there's... I'm not going to say that they don't consider things, because these are professionals. They consider everything. It's animation. That's our job. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering if there's any way more effort could be put into kind of finding those design solutions. Like, you can still design a shot where it's moody, but it still kind of maintains environmental continuity.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe that's like the meta level observations that they're counting on you not making. But since you're in the industry, you are making those observations.
It could be.
But I definitely agree with you, because if anything can take you out of the story, you'd probably prefer it didn't.
Right.
You know, so
right.
Why not?
So, yeah, like you said, like these are definitely more industry kind of level meta things. I don't think any audience members totally, I might call this a Preet observation. Mm-hmm. What is, oh man, Preet is a guy who works on a short film with me. He's a friend of mine. But, tell Preet I said hey. I will. But in The Good Dinosaur, actually, he saw it too. We were talking about it, and he was... I don't know how much I want to give away to you, but it's kind of a Western, which is weird because it's a dinosaur movie. But
the movie feels like a Western?
No, it is a Western. It just straight up is a Western.
What?
I wish it was called The Good Old Dinosaur, but beside the point. Spoiler alert.
Dinosaur at the OK Corral.
Yeah, but... So they're doing all these kind of primitive Old West type of things like farming and whatnot, but Preet's like, I was good with most of it, but then I saw rope. And I was like, how did these dinosaurs construct rope? And I was like, Preet, that's the most Preet observation I've ever heard. He's like, yeah, it is. He just gets into those kind of physical, like, you know, how does that actually happen?
Yeah,
kind
this
of things
is a limitation of this world, and therefore it should not
right.
exist in this world.
It was just a funny thing that reminded me of it.
Sweet.
But yeah, so, I like The Good Dinosaur. I don't know how much we want to go into it now until you've seen it, but I do have some comments about it.
Okay, maybe we'll update that in the next movie talk segment, because I'll try to see it in the next week or so.
Cool.
Let's see, what else is going on in the world in which we live? I know that we were talking about, we just had a good conversation. What were we just talking about?
Well, it was inspired by your Kobe Bryant video.
Right.
Was that a segue?
This is a thing...
That was a creative segue. No, just like asking me, what were you just talking about? Me answering it. Yeah. And you'd be like, segue.
Right. Segue! Anyway. Before we started making this podcast, Adam, I wanted to make it more like us focused. Not us focused, but like we were going to be characters.
This was me and John, sometimes we get very passionate in our fighting, and this was one of them.
This is one where Adam ended up having to go to the hospital.
we were discussing sort of the content of the podcast.
Yeah, I just thought it would be cool if we weren't going to be characters, we were going to be ourselves, but I thought it would be cool if more of ourselves kind of influenced the direction of the podcast. Anyway, this was something that Adam said would never happen, but we're going to talk about sports. Now, I make the argument often that the reason why a lot of people like sports is because there's inherently a story involved in sports.
Which I agree with.
There's like this narrative that if you take team A and you follow them back in time to when they were traded to this, or when they got moved to this city, or, you know, all the players that have existed playing for that team. And,
outstanding narrative.
Yeah, and how there's like, maybe there's a rivalry with Team B, and then you kind of play that up, and that's why...
And I would make the argument, sorry to interject, but competition in of itself has base level story elements. Yeah. Like, say, talking about football, like your goal is to get the ball to the other side. Your conflict, there's somebody in front of you.
And I think this is why sports movies are so, like... easy to make. I wouldn't say, I'm not saying easy to make, but I mean, like, you can use a football metaphor in Remember the Titans to show something that's happening culturally in the same film. Like, we can just kind of bounce ideas off of each other, and because there's already this struggle that's existing on the field, then we can compare that to a struggle that's existing off the field.
Right.
Anyway,
Yes.
I like sports. Basketball's not my favorite sport. I like football. I like baseball. I like
Okay, we don't care.
a whole bunch of other things. We do care. We care. Some
Okay.
people like sports. I'm not alone in this.
I know.
Anyway, but so sports.
Sports.
I can't say enough about sports. The passion, the
Shut up. Get to the point.
I just love them, man. I spend a significant amount of time watching sports.
So Kobe Bryant
sports,
is retiring.
Sports.
Tell
sports,
me
what?
about
Sports. You know this,
Well,
and you
only
know
because
this
of you.
because sports influence our lives on a daily basis. Adam knows about Kobe Bryant. Anyway, so Kobe Bryant is just recently announced that he was retiring, and in his interview, and you guys can find this online.
Yeah, I'll put it in the description because it's an
Sweet.
interesting interview.
He kind of discusses how he came to be at peace with the decision of leaving this thing that's been a part of his life for so long.
Right.
And if we stop there and just observe what Kobe's career has been, there's so many story elements that he discusses or that we can observe just within that. Like he in that interview he mentions that to some people he'll be seen as a hero and to some people he'll be seen as a villain. And he wrote this like goodbye letter to his fans and all this stuff. And there's just, you can see a movie almost being made out of this. But he gets to the end of the interview and Robin, the interviewer, is just like, hey, what's next for you? And he's like, I don't know. I couldn't find the next passion in my life. And then I figured it out. And it's story. And he doesn't phrase it like, I want to make a biopic of myself. But he's just like story. Which is interesting because for me, that just caught me completely off guard because he's a basketball player.
Right.
And it's not to say that, you know, athletes can't be smart or athletes can't have similar interests to me, but I know that he would have had to put so much of himself into being a basketball player to have a career with all the accomplishments that he's had that I wouldn't even think he would have had time to consider story. And so that's what really got me off guard.
And it was just kind of cool how he kind of breaks down sort of what he means, and it's clear that he's given it some thought. Like just, he wants to talk about the stories of that he's seen throughout his years of other players or through himself. And like you said, like I like the point where he makes it just like everybody can be seen as both a hero and a villain. It kind of comes down to our humanity and what makes us us.
Yeah, he talks about like how you deal with adversity, and if you like in the moments that we have these ugly moments where we just have a knee-jerk reaction to something and kind of the villain attributes show up, or you know, when you deal with something really well and you might persevere, and that's kind of the more hero moments.
Right, and it all comes down to perspective. And we were talking about like that's like solid character development. Like that's when people refer to as character having depth. That's what it is. Like when a character can be seen both as a hero and a villain based on the perspective.
Yeah, I was telling you about this. Danielle and I started watching this show last night. What it is irrelevant, but because I don't even really remember the title. I watched like 5 episodes, but I can tell you who's in it or whatever. But what I will tell you is the first episode I watched with very little of the exposition, you know, of the story, I immediately didn't like one of the characters. But then when I came to know more of the background, when I came to know more of the exposition, my whole view on that person changed. Because what was presented to me first was kind of this more villainous personality.
Right.
But then when I came to know that this was, I wouldn't say that the action that he did was justified, but it was reciprocal of what had been done to him. Then I came to know who this character was more, and they started showing more of like his little tiny traits, the idiosyncrasies that made him him, and I liked that character a lot more by episode 5. Like he became one of my favorite characters. And then I think if we tie that into like a show like Game of Thrones, where George R. R. Martin kind of keeps you on your toes, you never know when one of your favorite characters is going to be axed, or if they're truly axed, and then they kind of developed the show in such a way where by the time I had watched through maybe season 3 of Game of Thrones, I was like, what if X character isn't a bad guy? And he develops him in such a way so your allegiance will sway, or you just will choose not to pick a side and just watch how it all pans out. But
And you're saying just like with that X character, if you could just like just inch your perspective just a little, you could totally see how his actions portray him very much as a bad guy.
Or how certain characters, other characters in the story with limited information might view that person as a bad guy.
Right.
And
so just building the characters' sort of motivations and reasonings, but also getting someone to know that character so down deep they can see them either like as, wow, I see he's doing bad things, but he's a good person, or just straight up, no, he's a bad person.
Regardless of what I now learn about this person, they're ruthless. You know?
Right.
And I think that's something I hadn't really considered. As a writer, you really do have the power to determine how much the audience knows about a character.
True.
And so you can be withholding up front and then inform the audience as the story plays out. And that's that whole thing that we talk about sometimes where we're like informing the audience over the course of the story, who the character is. Like you need a certain amount of information up front to just have a base understanding, but then expounding upon that point later on.
It's kind of like my point in Up, where I talk about Charles Muntz not being a super strong villain, but that's intentional. Like there was an interview where Pete Docter talks about how originally Charles Muntz was a lot more developed, but he took too much, like he was too interesting of a villain, and he took too much of the story away, and the story was about Carl and Ellie, not about him defeating Charles.
And in that sense,
so they had to like strip him down and make him a shallower villain to make that story more clear.
And in that sense, this whole thing of like, it's almost like expository pacing. It's like you want to make sure that the main thing is the main thing. Or if you're purposely trying to round out a character or give like a Charles Muntz more character, a fuller character, more depth, then you're doing that with intention. Because you don't want to be doing some kind of sleight of hand where you're like, look over here at this really interesting character while the real story's happening over here. You want your attention, your audience's attention to be where you want your attention.
Actually, I wish you'd seen The Good Dinosaur, because that's my biggest complaint.
Oh.
But I'm not going to go any further than that.
Well, we will next week, or the next time we do this.
Next time we do this. Which should be next week.
Yeah. I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be.
This computer blows up or something.
Yeah. Well, that would be awful.
It's always a slight fear of mine. Just you press the button, there goes everything.
Yeah, and I think we've gotten to a point with technology where that's really unlikely. But at the same time, you know what really doesn't blow up spontaneously that much? Pencil and paper.
It's true.
But you can't edit films on pencil and paper that well.
Yeah, you could go old school, just like straight cut it with. I think that's more
dangerous because, like, what if you just like slip and then you cut the frame in half?
Yeah.
Then you got to get creative and figure out a fix.
That's the life of an editor, bro.
That's the life of a 1980s editor, bro.
Yeah. Maybe a little earlier. I guess that was around the time when things were shifting.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you mean the digital?
No. There was a whole... It's in a blink of an eye, but there was a whole... George Lucas was, like, developing stuff, like, where you could copy the actual film to tape, so you could edit it on a computer. You'd still have to, in the end, cut the original film, but at least you could do it, like, non-linearly in the computer first, and kind of pick your point instead of being like, nope, this is it, chink.
Now we're getting into, like, Avid... computer programs and stuff like that.
And the Moviolas were just straight cuts. So,
yeah.
Anyways,
but
who cares?
Non-destructive editing techniques.
You guys should get into editing. It's really interesting.
It is.
That's where we are with Snip, our short film. That was the overwhelming feedback we got at CTN was story's there, which is great because if the story's not there, then who am I?
What have you been doing?
What have I been doing?
2.5, 3 years, yeah.
But pacing, people kept saying there were really slow parts, so we have to get into the edits and really kind of flesh that out.
Which isn't quite awesome because you've worked so hard to make it what it is, but it's necessary.
I'd rather, like I said, like they're just. I don't want to put anybody on blast, but student films and stuff every now and then. In a CTN, you just see some, you're just like, I don't know what's going on. And if you say, I don't know what's going on, oof, you're not in a good place with your film.
Well, we experienced that with our first live action.
Two. Oh, okay, yeah. But our first two, we don't want to talk about the first one. Our second one for sure, Briefcase, which you guys can still find on the YouTubes. But yeah, that one, nobody knows what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Actually, I do know what's going on, but
We know what's going on.
I co-wrote it, so
Yeah. It doesn't matter what you think.
It doesn't matter what I think.
That's funny. Like, you spend all this time making this thing,
Yeah.
that logic really doesn't... I don't know. Like, if you have a child, after you've had that child, you bring it into the world, you, like, mold this human being into hopefully being a productive member of society.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what you think anymore.
It doesn't.
Oh my gosh. It's real. It applies. It applies to other things besides film. Because, I mean, in the end, what's your end goal with that child? If your end goal is for them to be a productive member of society, then it would probably matter more what society considers productive.
True.
Versus what you consider. Because, like,
Yeah.
like my mom said, this, that, and the other. If you think about that logic, like, nobody cares what your mom thinks. She's your mom.
Yeah.
So
She was a very kind of... It's like... it's like... So, for instance, when showing a pretty prominent member in the animation industry our film, they asked who was editing it, and I said I was. And they're like, oh, you can't direct and edit. As director, you're too close. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, yeah, your mom's too close to you. She can't get that bird's eye view of your actual productive role in society.
anyway.
Well, we're at 29 minutes.
We did that.
Yeah. Is there anything else you have to say to the people? We wanted to think of a question for the people, but we did not actually flesh out.
So, do you have a question for us? Is the question. Do the people have a question
For us? Yeah. If you do in the comments, I'm sure we'll do a Tumblr thing next time too. Mm-hmm. That's usually beneficial.
Yeah, and we're going to try to be even more organized on the podcast. Maybe
We always say that.
We're
going
to
to stop saying it until we actually do.
No, I'm going to try. I'm going to say it because if we make a verbal commitment, then people have higher expectations and we'll have to try to meet them.
True.
Yeah.
But I appreciate everybody listening to this. I became much more aware of just like that people actually listen to this at CTN. So thank you guys. It was great meeting the 6 of you. We traded cards and stuff. It was a lot of fun.
And as for all the rest of you who weren't at CTN, myself included, it's great hearing from you as well.
Yes.
We really appreciate the feedback. And Critical Hit in both of its forms, via Critical Hit videos or podcast, is really a way for us to just kind of be creatively engaged, and it's helpful to have a community in which to do that.
And do you want to talk on that a little more? I know that's a big point you've been trying to make about how, not today, but you do talk to me about it a lot, about how like you do creative stuff at your job, but it's not creative stuff you want to do. So Critical Hit has become a little more important to you in that aspect of like, this is something that you care about, and it's important to have that sort of creative thing on the side that you care about to keep you inspired and motivated.
Yeah. Do you want to ask me a question and then
And then
say
answer
everything that I'm going to say again? Do you want to do that? Anyway,
sorry.
But that's true. I mean, for all of you who are still in school or working on something,
You want to get a little salty there?
I'm not salty. I try to stay away from salt because
High sodium.
yeah, I don't want to have high blood pressure. Anyway, for all of you who are working your way into the industry or students or whatever, the point in your career where you are now is actually super valuable because you get more opportunities to make the stuff that you want to make.
True.
The next step is like what you think your goal is to like work on things that other people want to make, which it may still be, and you will have a great time doing it. Yeah. But it's also really important to stay engaged in your own kind of thing and keep creatively motivated and have a side hustle and do it.
An important part of that, for me at least, it might not be for everybody, but an important part of my side hustle, as you phrase it, is doing it with people that I care and trust their opinions, like you. I very much enjoy making stuff with you because you can say, Adam, that's a stupid idea. I don't like it. And then we can I trust your opinion on that. Whereas you talk about when, say, someone above you at your job tells you that.
Or a client. It's just
a client,
that's
exactly.
Dumb. We're not going to talk about it. It's just not happening.
It needs to change. Like, you don't trust that person's opinion as much. And it's just like, I have to change it anyways.
There are definitely times, and I maybe shouldn't say this, but I will say this anyway, but there are definitely times nobody cares about what I do on the weekends. There are definitely times when I'm like, that creative choice that may have been made by somebody higher up than me, that was not necessarily the best thing. Yeah. And I'm just, oh well, that's too bad that you have an opinion, John. Like,
and
nobody cares.
It's a bummer because you can't even have that discussion.
Right. It's
sometimes you might disagree with a higher up opinion, but as long as you have a discussion of like, why that choice is better, then you at least you gave a fighting chance and they respected your opinion. And like, no, I still, this is kind of the way. But if they're just like, no, do it, I don't care what you think. That's really demotivating and exhausting.
Yeah, and as Chip Skylark says on Fairly Odd Parents, find your voice.
Gotta find your voice.
And so if you can't have your voice at work, then have your voice on the side. It'll be extremely cathartic.
Cool. I felt, we were only at half an hour. That was only 3 minutes. I thought it would be a little longer than that.
I'm done.
You're done.
You answered half the thing for me, so.
I'm sorry. I was trying to inspire you, but by inspiring you, I was just answering your question.
So, in case you guys are kind of like bummed out that we didn't do anything for a while, I am chomping at the bit to do something again. So Chomping.
Like Chompy the Goat and Fairly Odd Parents. All right, we said Fairly Odd Parents twice. That was our goal.
Yeah.
We can end this now.
All right. Peace
You guys
out.
have a great week, and tell better stories.